So here we are with Charlotte Mason in the city, and I am
Hmm.
here today with my friend Amanda Gonsalves, and we're kind of at the beginning of launching something new. We're
Yeah.
hosting an event in a month, and we have another friend, Ann Butler, who's going to be joining us pretty regularly on the podcast. And
Yeah.
so hopefully the three of us will do some things, but we just wanted to have a chat because
Mhm.
we were prepping our event, and here we are, like, let's do a podcast. Let's try this out
Why not?
together. And
Mhm.
Amanda just had this great idea that we just want to have a conversation about a little bit, and have you invite you to listen in and to
Mhm.
consider some of these things. And Amanda, you actually gave a talk about a year ago, right?
Yeah, it
About
was at
the
the
book, the
beginning of the school
volumes.
year. Yep, beginning of the
So
school year last year.
this
Hmm.
is I think from having prepped that, you have a perception about like the historical context a little bit of the Charlotte
Hmm.
Mason's life and what she
Yeah.
was going through. But what you were bringing up is that a lot of the things that we are encountering and feeling about our culture and
Hmm.
modernity, it's actually applicable. Charlotte Mason has a lot to say about that. She's had
Hmm.
lived through that. So share a little bit about what you were just kind of
Yeah.
sharing with me.
Yeah, we were just chatting off the cuff, and I was thinking about that verse about like there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Yeah.
We think that we're living in, really special times, and no one else is dealing with the same sort of circumstances that we are. And in some ways that's true. In some ways that is true. But in other ways, people in the past have dealt with external and internal pressures as well, and Charlotte Mason was really living in this time, the Victorian era. It was like the turn of the century, right? From 1890s, like the horse and buggy, and like the technology wasn't quite up there yet. And all of a sudden they hit 1900 and bang, things started taking off. Like there was the industrial, I mean, how is this going to impact the world? And the movement of information was starting to speed up, and we are living in that, in that world. And she wrote a lot about like the theory of evolution was around then. It was kind of new, and she was concerned. She was like, not just about that, but like there were a number of these kind of external pressures happening, and she was concerned. She was like, I want to impact the next generation. She didn't have children of her own, but she was the mother of many, many, many. And she was concerned for her nation, really. And she said, how do we make Britain stronger? Is we must impact the children. And so, I don't know, I was really struck with that as I was doing this, putting together this talk, because again, we think we're, you know, unique in like the AI thing that's, for example, that's kind of bearing down on us. And like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, Charlotte Mason was facing her version of that kind of existential crisis too, with all
She was born
modernization.
in 1842, so like right
Hmm.
in the middle of the Industrial Revolution as well. So
Right.
then when you just think
Hmm.
about um all of the inventions and the development through
Hmm.
her lifetime, even,
Hmm.
when I've done the research for my music website, one of the things that really has stuck out to me is in the early years of the PNEU, when Charlotte Mason was preparing her programs and these book lists for parents to
Hmm.
follow, and they would do composer study. In the beginning, they were encouraged to buy sheet music and find a pianist and have this musical day where a pianist would play the violin part
Hmm.
or the piano part, and they would listen to a Beethoven piece on the piano with a
Hmm.
person who can sight read that music. And then, like in the 1920s, prior to her death, those last parents review, or sorry, the programs that list the resources for music
Hmm.
study, and then even a little bit after her death, like in the beginning of the 1930s, it's telling people to get a gramophone and
That's
like buy a
yep.
record.
Yep, you don't need it. That's kind of like our version of, how things have gone, like from CDs, right?
Yeah,
Tapes
well,
actually to
cassettes.
CDs to,
Well, and the what are the 8 tracks? Is that what those were called?
yep,
We had an 8 track player when
absolutely.
I was little,
Yep.
and then I had a
Hmm.
record player and I'd play records and
Yep.
dance around my house and sing, and then cassette tapes, and then CDs in high school.
Yep, yep. And
And
my
then
college roommate brought her tape collection to our freshman dorm. And at that point, I was like, Catherine, these are not coming back. We need to just get rid of these. Okay. She's like, no, I think they're coming back. Because at that point, we'd moved on to CD.
yep, and
Um,
I just finally threw away some of my cassettes. Actually, I have an old CD player here next to me that I bought at Goodwill to
just hang
have
on to them.
the
Yeah.
cassette player. The
Yeah.
CD
Oh.
player's broken. I wanted the cassettes
Oh.
because I have a few old cassettes that are special, but they're
Yeah.
actually cassettes my mom recorded for me of my old records that I
Really?
liked. But she still has the records, so I should just buy a new record player at Target.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, records are cool now. They're vintage. They're in.
But
Yeah. But Charlotte
yeah,
Mason really
it's
saw a lot
so
of change in her time.
she did
Hmm.
see a lot of change, and maybe more significant change, like really life altering change when you
Well,
think
and
about.
culture shifting.
Yeah,
And that's the thing is like what we're dealing with right now is the
yeah.
culture shifting changes. And like
Mhm.
looking at people like Charlotte Mason, how did she deal with that? Like she went back to the bedrock of like, what is it that makes us human? What is it that makes us
What are those
connect
three
with God?
things? What are those three kind of key principles that, when I think about like all of education, all of life is education, is was
Hmm.
kind of her view, but it's like education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. And those were, I think, bedrock foundational things that are actually rooted in the Bible,
Absolutely. Yes.
and in scripture. Like, what is the foundation to all of living? It's the atmosphere in which we live and breathe,
Hmm.
and like
Hmm.
how do we, that's culture making, right? We're
Hmm.
like, how are we going to make culture through the atmosphere in which we live? And we
Hmm.
know from all of the, like, I mean, the trauma research that I've read and different things with the kids that I've worked with, like the things that they are just like absorbing and living
Hmm.
through,
Hmm.
that's raising them up into the culture that
Yeah.
they become as an adult, and that's
Hmm.
how we all are. And
Hmm.
so that atmosphere, I mean, it's kind of the debate of nature versus nurture, right?
Hmm.
But like the nurture piece is the atmosphere, and that's important. We know it's
Yes.
important. And then
Yeah, and like another thing that you're just making my brain here go off when I think about how she was teaching her people is she really resisted the temptation that modernity brought, which was to break everything down into separate pieces and have a specialization. You know what I'm talking about? Like, okay, now this teacher is going to teach this. Now this teacher is going to teach this. And that gives the child that the idea that these things are separate.
or
And
to be
Charlotte
trained for
Mason
the
is like,
career.
no, everything is connected.
Hmm.
Yes, right, because they have to be specialized. And she
Hmm.
kept saying, no, that is not the way that you raise a child to love to learn. It's more organic than that. Things are connected. We are a whole person. God created us body, mind, and spirit, and they're all connected. And so I really admire that about her work because that was a big pressure and a big push in education at in those days as it is now today, right? Like to break everything down and to break it apart and to pre-digest it and so that everything can be quicker and more efficient. And what does Charlotte Mason say over and over again? Invite the children to the feast and they'll take what they can because it's all connected and it's all part of their digestive system and the Lord designed it that way and we're not going to come up with a better way than what he came up with.
And that's really the education is a life piece. But then, in her 20 principles, it's like she lists out the atmosphere, discipline, life piece, but then she goes on and she talks about the science of relations. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, I mean, everything is connected, but a lot of people feel like what she's saying there is that we have to show the kids how everything is connected, except
Right.
that she says it's not that. It's that the child has relationships with science,
Hmm.
with art, with, so it's more like the child is here and you draw these lines coming out of all the
Hmm.
relationships. And then everything does become interconnected, but it's what I think is beautiful is the science of relationships is that learning is about relationship.
Yes. It's
And
beautiful.
like that's the same, that's also about culture, really. I mean, it's about like the bedrock of culture is that we have relationships with all these things. And
Right.
then, like the relationship, the knowledge of God, the knowledge of the universe, the knowledge of man, all of these
Hmm.
knowledges that we can have, these are relationships that we have. And then
Hmm.
she says,
Hmm.
like, the ultimate knowledge and the ultimate relationship is with the Savior. And
Hmm.
knowledge of God is the ultimate knowledge. And so the fact that she's, and well, and what you mentioned when we were chatting before we began recording was just that like she passed away in 1923, but they lived through World War One.
Yep.
So we have all
Yes.
this change and then a world war
And
that's
then the
devastating.
disillusionment that came after
Yeah,
that World War
yeah.
too, that World War as well. Just but that
And
pressure on the society at the time. She was very concerned about that, about how
yeah,
young
and
people
those
would.
are her last 10 years of her life.
Yep.
That time frame. And yet, what's beautiful is she became more passionate. So, the book that I'm reading The Story of Charlotte Mason by Essex Chumley.
Mm.
And then,
Hmm.
beside that, A Liberal Education for All, that Carol Smith and John Thorley just put together. And it's a compilation of her letters that
Mm.
she wrote to several key people in the PNEU, but it's about making these ideas available to everybody, to
Yes.
all children.
Yes. Yep.
And
Hmm.
it's interesting that like that started like 1913, 1914, and that then the war happens. So I think that kind of got in the way of her mission a little bit. In some ways, it
Hmm.
slowed it down. But that those last 10 years of her life from 1913 to 1923, this liberal education for all vision was something she was so passionate about, and that she wanted all children and all people to have access to this type of learning. It's like we want children to have this known relationship with science, know a knowing relationship with math, with art, with beauty, with music, with geography, all these different relationships. And those living ideas is really what feeds our soul. And I think that's
Sorry.
very grounding.
Hmm. Yeah, and one last thing I want to say about her and her work is that it was fascinating to me, and you can probably speak to this too, is how she started with just her own small group, right? Just like her own children she worked in, like it was a small sphere of children. And then she learned to train teachers, and then she started teacher training school, and then she started a parent training school. You see how like the circles of her influence just got wider and wider. And then she tried for a while to influence the headmasters of schools. And for she got so much resistance before the war. But then after the war, I think this is right, that after the war they were begging her to come in and help them with these problems that they were also seeing in their schools. And so then they welcomed her. So it's like the Lord really in his timing opened the door. And then what you were speaking to is like the last part of her life, her message really got out even further, but she was unable to actually do the work herself. She was doing it from her bed, really, in writing letters and getting the information out. And so I don't know, it's just so beautiful how she expanded her message, and she really wanted it to be for all children. She really wanted this beautiful thing to be for all children. And she had a lot of hindrances herself for, getting that message out. So
She had
relatable.
she had chronic illness and she would travel they think it was with her heart and I think and she would travel down to Germany to take these baths and things and she
Hmm.
had a portable chair that she would like sit out so she could go on these nature
Yep.
outings and things and still be outside but yeah, so then you see that even in her own life, she practiced what she was preaching.
Yeah,
That
right.
she had these habits of being in nature, being outdoors, still traveling,
Mm-hmm.
still reading. I mean, you look at her life schedule and the things that she spent. She
Amazing.
would
How much
she
she
would
got
have
so
these
much
like
done.
10-minute segments of time where she'd read Sir Walter Scott novels and things to give herself new ideas and
She had a good stiff read, right?
yeah.
She had her three books going at the same time. Well, that was one of her concerns too, is that she was concerned, with the modernity coming, and then all of the inventions coming to supposedly free people up to give them more free time. She was very much concerned about how people would spend this free time. How will they spend it? Will they spend it on being indolent and being, I don't know, wasting their time, dissipation? Or will they spend it, you know, filling up their minds and nourishing their minds? And I mean, that was kind of her desire too, of like to invite people to the feast, and to not just let it drip away. And she really, like you said, she really modeled that in her life. I mean, if her life.
Section she writes about older girls too that are still living at home and being educated. She really emphasizes the importance of them learning skills that can be of service to others. And so,
Mhm.
um, just even thinking, I mean, to transition this to the third piece of like, what are these bedrock
Mhm.
pieces I think that we can look to now that still applies also besides the like the science of relations and the ideas and the atmosphere that we have in our homes is also when she talks about habits. But I think that is how we spend our time, right?
Mhm.
There's that uh James K. Smith, James A. K. Smith, gosh, I can't remember, but the You Are What You Love book.
Hmm.
And it's about habit formation, but kind of the liturgies we practice in our lives that like
Hmm.
um we become the things that we love. So when you're talking about like her
Mhm.
being worried about how we would spend our free time, well, when we think about how people are spending their free time now, it is concerning. It's concerning to us because
Mhm.
they're spending their free time being entertained
Mhm. That's
by
right.
TikTok videos,
Right.
scrolling through my reels. Why have
Right.
279 people watched my reel
And
that
now we're
no
contributing to that.
we're
Right.
contributing
Hmm.
to it? But
Right.
the hope is that the content that we offer is a living idea and not just
Hmm.
entertainment.
But
Because
yet, to bring it back to what we were talking about, right, is like we have the same pressures in a different way,
yeah,
right? This is,
yeah.
and we're seeing this play out in our world, and we're concerned about the same things that she was concerned about.
I have
You have a
somebody
visitor?
popping into our video.
I
But
could.
mom,
Yep.
mom, um,
I didn't hear that. I just saw the hi.
recording really soon.
No.
And so but the I think that her habit thing still applies to fighting against that. Like
Mm-hmm.
those are still the same things that we can practice with our families and our children because when you have these so this liturgy piece is like if you love money, you habituate the love of money by pursuing the things that you love and you become that. You become a money lover. But when
Mm-hmm.
you have habits in your day of walking or praying or cooking or serving others, and you love those things, you love Christ, or you love, the more you practice those liturgies throughout your day, you habituate that and that you become those things.
Mm.
You become a
Beautiful.
poet, you become a walker, you become somebody who prays because you love those things and you have these habits and liturgies throughout your day or these like ordered practices. And so I think that Charlotte Mason said she would emphasize habits less at the end of her life. But I think it's because you can be pharisaical or
Mhm.
like programmatic about habit
Legalistic.
formation. You can be the parent, be like, pick up your
Yeah.
clothes, pick up the dishes, do your chores. What habit are we working on? We're working on patience, and you gotta be patient. But,
Right.
so that kind of habit formation, like the habit for this month is patience. That's kind of gaggy. But I think like if the whole family practices the habit of being a family that gardens together and walks together and
Mm-hmm.
prays together, and these are
Mm-hmm.
the things that we love as a family, those are actually habits that form us, and they're grounding when
Mm-hmm.
it feels like we might be on the verge of another war.
Right.
We don't
Exactly.
we don't have to be afraid because we have these calming practices and habits and ideas and things that we love that we have relationships with, and we have an
Mm-hmm.
atmosphere that's happy and healthy. So when we
Mm-hmm.
build those things as a family, that brings a lot of stability to us and to our kids in a world that
Absolutely.
feels just as chaotic now as it did to her.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love what you're bringing out there. And it is just comforting. It is just comforting to know that, like, again, nothing is new under the sun. And Charlotte Mason dealt and faced these challenges that she had in her lifetime with culture, just as we're facing our challenges in our culture in our lifetime too. So, yeah, great.
It's
Okay.
always a good podcast when your teenage daughter interrupts. I mean,
I think that's
how
perfect.
how how more real do we get than the fact that we're homeschool
Well,
moms, and it's a
we're not putting
Monday
on
night.
any show here at
It's a
all.
Monday
This
night
is
and
who we
it's
are.
9:50 and it's bedtime and we have to teach
Yep.
our kids in the morning. So
And
good
we
night,
gotta go to
everybody.
bed.
We're
Yes.
glad you joined us and we
Yeah.
hope you'll
Thanks for
listen again
joining
next
us.
time.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.